The Mandalorian Season 3 is uninspired garbage. It sucks balls so hard, the scrotum gets tangled around the tonsils, and it is designed to be consumed by people with the attention span of a goldfish with Alzheimer's. It's never easy, but there comes a time when figures you esteemed for much of your life drift so far from their early appeal that they forfeit whatever they initially had, or just come across as a pussy one too many times. So it is with Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. Even the first season of the show has lost much of its allure in retrospect, and can be seen for what it really was. Fans clutching on to anything that seemed halfway decent after the ludicrous spectacle of a returning Palpatine and horses galloping over the hull of a Star Destroyer in The Rise of Skywalker. As if the fanbase were like a 14-year-old boy whose parents have confiscated his phone and denied him internet access, and access to Pornhub in particular, who then furtively searches around, finds a lingerie catalogue, and achieves a semblance of gratification. We pick up the tattered threads of the story with the armourer crafting a helmet using the ponderous methods of a 17th century ironmonger, before apparently discreetly going behind a curtain where a 21st century 3D printer is, and emerging with this little helmet, then leading a procession out of a cave onto a beach, where a Mando clan are waiting for a ceremony to initiate a child into the way of the Order. Obviously, the showrunners scoured Hollywood to procure a child who could exude a rough-hewn, stoic presence that would convey an upbringing akin to the Spartan warriors of Greek lore. I'm just kidding. They booked Wesley Kimmel, nephew of late-night talk show host Jimmy Kimmel. They did, however, work with Wesley to project a hardened beyond his years, flat, even brash tone at his impending rite of passage. Again, I'm just kidding.
I swear on my name and the names of the ancestors.
As Southern Californian Manda Nippo Baby receives his helmet, which will be too small for him after a 6-month growth spurt, the armorer dips a shallow wooden bowl into the water as a further element of the rite. Why? Who knows? Anyway, just as the Kimmel DeLorean is finishing his oath, there is a sudden commotion. The benignly pussyish writers who assembled for a media featurette to write the script for the High Republic and sketched out their priorities and wish list on a whiteboard for our viewing displeasure will no doubt be happy or even slightly aggrieved that they've been beaten to the punch, having listed dinosaurs as an ideal component, because that's what we're getting in the first few minutes. Now, Star Wars has proven itself able to think creatively when it comes to large-scale creatures in the past. Think of the ogre-like, grotesque Rancor. Should the writers have come up with something unique and compelling here? Look, I don't think there was any special onus on them to do so. And that was their mindset as well, so we get something that's a lazily unimaginative cross between a crocodile and a diplodocus, and we get to watch it writhe and spasm in a visually nauseating purgatory between 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional, while the tribe blast it with lasers. In a voice that sounds like it has been electronically slowed down and pitched by 50%, a Mandabro orders the kids to safety.
Young ones, to the gate!
Which then raises the question, how come these much smaller kids already have helmets? Does that mean that Wesley Fett was behind schedule? Or do they get helmets from a young age, but are able to take them off at the dinner table and at bath time, and it's only when they reach proper initiation age that they have to leave it on for good? The warriors attempt to corral the creature, despite their collective weight and torsion of their wires being relative to the creature's bulk and strength, like trying to tether a Doberman with strands of cotton thread. Finally, our hero arrives to save the day, his ship heralded with an actually hilarious cheesy trumpet fanfare. He lands, and then we get our first Season 3 look at Grogu. Mando speaks with the armorer, who reiterates to him that he is no longer Mandalorian, because he willingly took his helmet off. Mando says that he can find redemption and be unveiled back into the Order if he bathes in the living waters below the mines of Mandalore. For some bizarre reason, in this cavernous, sparse workspace there happens to be an amusingly incongruous children-sized wooden table just in front of Mando, which Mando duly sits down at. Why is it there? Why are its dimensions suited more to Ewoks who might want to take a load off rather than buffed up warriors in bulky armor? Mando explains further that the mines may still exist, based off evidence he has procured. Why have no Mandalores known to be adeptly starfaring and brave ever attempted to independently verify this about their own home planet? Unclear. Because this show is being watched by people who care more for Baby Yoda than pesky or cringe things like plot or exposition, Grogu was placed in shot again, and again, and again, to sustain the attention of viewers whose phones are dinging with inane notifications. We then switch to a scene of Mando asleep whilst careening through lightspeed, with the viewer treated to a long stretch of an inanimate latex puppet staring at a green screen lightspeed tunnel, which seems to feature gigantic ghost sperm racing to fertilize an intergalactic egg. These are creatures that live in deep space, traveling across the galaxy through hyperspace routes. Not familiar with this? Doesn't matter, just take a minute to scroll. Your Instagram pic of your plate of restaurant food just got another like, and your hyper-edited TikTok monologue on the Lilo and Stitch race controversy seems to be performing well with your followers too. Grogu, disconcerted by the spectacle, slinks down to nestle with the slumbering Mando. How exactly does he manage this? There seems to be no visible crawl space between Mando's seat and the outer hull, so does Grogu crawl under the seat and then up between Mando's legs? Why would there be a child-sized crawl space in a tight, sleek cockpit, especially since the viewing space at the top is designed for a droid fixed into place? Anyway, the pair arrive on the planet Navarro to see Greef Karga about a droid. The Planetary Traffic Control Service asks him his reason for visiting.
Please state the purpose of your visit.
Here to meet an old friend.
Well, that's a satisfactory answer that justifies the inquiry in the first place and establishes a credible threshold for foreign visit security measures. If your mind was active, allow it to slump back into inertia with some generic Star Wars alien stuff. Look, it's Salacious Crumb creatures. You remember Salacious Crumb, a species that, rather than laughing with a kind of vicious mirth to unfolding circumstances that would prompt such a reaction, apparently just makes their insidious cackle as a matter of course, even if they're just slinking around in a tree in a public square. These creatures are called Quokian monkey lizards, by the way, but you needn't worry. There's a spat breaking up between two posters on a subreddit, so you can follow that for a moment or two. There is then a reunion with Carl Weathers' Greef Karga. He has two mini robots to carry the train of his cape, like indentured ladies-in-waiting, and who can trundle clatteringly and awkwardly downstairs, but have no apparent means of ascending stairs. We are then introduced to a robot assistant whose creative design is so painfully lame it evokes the catastrophically camp efforts of Buck Rogers. The robot, with a face like a slot machine, informs Karga that there are some pirates who wish to talk to him. These pirates are milling outside a building, and the lead pirate lurches and cavorts lecherously under his prosthetics like a student actor at community theatre, and then we are sucked into an anomalous dialogue rift from which it begins to feel escape is not possible. The lead pirate, whose voice oscillates haphazardly and indiscriminately between Cockney and Mid-Atlantic, invites Karga into the building for a drink.
Come, join us for a drink.
In a moment of droll dialogue comedy gold, Karga tells the pirate,
This is a school.
There is then a witty retort.
Well, that explains why she wouldn't let me inside.
And then it's time to move on from drinks and locations to a more dynamic escalation in their exchange.
Join me for a drink back at my office.
Well, almost time.
We drink here.
Oh, we've still got a ways to go, but at least we've overcome the wry discrepancy about the building.
That is a school now.
So we're definitely done with this naggingly repetitive loop of interaction.
I say it's still a bar.
Definitely done.
Not if you serve me a drink.
Not in my school.
Anyway, after this script-writing impotent and unaroused circle jerk, there is a shootout in which you wish everyone dies. And then Mando informs Karga that he wants to resurrect IG-11, who has been elevated and consecrated to the noble perpetuity of statudom, which is apparently a thing that is appropriate for a soulless assassin droid. Bear in mind, in the whole scope of this planet's modern history, no figure, no poet, magistrate, inventor, or scientist is more deserving of pride of place beneath the municipal buildings than the partial remains of the Star Wars equivalent of a Cyberdyne Systems hunter-killer. Also bear in mind that the self-destruct explosive device that IG-11 set off to comprehensively obliterate himself was located square in the middle of his chest, and yet his exhumed remains are his upper torso and head. Anywho, IG-11 reanimates and immediately tries to kill Grogu, scraping along like a dismembered Terminator driven to kill a member of the Connor family, and rather than be subdued by repeated laser blasts, is ultimately put to rights by a ceremonial bust statue that is able to squish his armor-plated cranium like tin. While we're contending with this absurdity, we're given a 1960s James Bond-level pun, which is exactly the kind of response tonally you want from a cool bounty-hunting intergalactic badass.
Now that's using your head.
In order to properly fix IG-11, Mando visits the Anzellans, who were originally these construction worker Fraggles from Fraggle Rock, who collectively suffered horrific third-degree burns in a mass incident and now inhabit a grotto fixing droids. Though kind of cute, there's also something kind of janky about them, and weirdly, their dialogue doesn't always match up with their mouth movements.
Buy new droid. This one poodle.
Leaving IG-11 in these creatures' hands, Mando and Grogu depart, and are almost straight away set upon by the earlier pirate and a crew of others. Shall we chuck in a fighter sequence that more or less shamelessly rips off the asteroid battle chase in Empire Strikes Back? Might as well. We then are stopped in our tracks by the appearance of this guy, who looks like someone poorly cosplaying as the evil sea captain out of Pirates of the Caribbean, except he fucked it up by taping on the kind of green tinsely shit people wear as fake hair at office parties or at New Year's as a nominal beard, but it rained on the way to the convention, and he got soaked while dashing from the Uber to the main doors. Shall we give him a cool robotic affected voice, or get a classically trained voice actor to give it some distinction or particular character?
From a man who just destroyed 4 of my...
Nah. Shall we add in a Mandalorian castle that looks like a Soviet Politburo building from the 1970s? Yeah, go ahead. And a robot who, it seems, is just standing there randomly with no forewarning of an arrival, and who, the other 99.9% of the time, just hangs out standing still in the rain? Does he go back inside at night? Finally, Mando encounters Bo-Katan. Similar to the robot, a fair question is, how long prior to Mando's arrival had she just been sprawled out on this humongous chair? Did she spend vast amounts of time here? In the silence, with no stimulation and no other people to interact with? They have a conversation about the dark saber and Mando's intentions to visit the homeworld. And that, thank God, is that. Now, you might have assumed that this was going to be a review of the entire Series 3, especially given it just wrapped up. Well, that's not going to happen because my heart and my soul can't take it. I also don't want to expend my own time watching another 7 episodes of this. So, that's as far as I'm taking it, which is approximately 34 minutes longer than you need to.